美方声称要经营中国，但不寻求冲突。美方所谓的竞争，就是全方位的遏制、打压。
Did you know that the United States' concern for Taiwan's freedom is about more than just a far-off island? It's a complex matter tied to American security, liberty, and prosperity. Let's unravel this puzzle in simple terms. Let's start at the beginning. It's widely accepted that China is a major player on the global stage. But what's less clear is how the United States should address this emerging superpower. Should the U.S. adopt a hands-off approach, focusing on strengthening its economy, or should it be proactive in dealing with China's rise? It's a problem that relies on a multitude of factors. Before we delve into the intricacies of U.S. policy towards China and Taiwan, it's essential to understand the core principles of American foreign policy. The central objective of American foreign policy is not to alleviate or democratize the world, but to safeguard the United States and its citizens. It revolves around protecting American physical security, personal liberties, economic prosperity, and economic security. When we talk about safeguarding these American interests, we must identify the most significant threats. The most perilous threat to these interests is a formidable global power that has the capability to challenge or undermine them. This is where hard power, specifically economic strength and the military might it affords, comes into play. Lesser threats can be managed more readily, but when a truly great power emerges, it poses a unique danger. With the United States constituting roughly 20% of global GDP, economic productivity is the bedrock of power in the modern world. Consequently, only a few countries can aspire to become potent enough to pose a real threat to the U.S. at this scale. At present, the only country that truly fits this description is China. But let's remember, China alone is not inherently powerful enough to imperil U.S. interests. Like the U.S., China also accounts for about 20% of the global GDP. So, how can China potentially threaten our interests? The answer lies in China's ambition to dominate Asia, a region that is rapidly becoming the epicenter of the world, with over 50% of global GDP in its future outlook. If China could achieve dominance over Asia, it would be in a formidable position to exert control over not only this vast continent, but also the world at large, including the United States. Imagine a world where China is the central force in the global economy, where all commercial and trade flows revolve around China. In this scenario, China's companies become world leaders, its universities set the global standard, its rules are universally followed, and it holds the key to the world's most substantial market area. It's not just about economic dominance, it's about economic development on a colossal scale. For nations that align themselves with China, following its economic, diplomatic, and security dictates, there are rewards to be reaped. However, for those that resist, penalties await, including exclusion from access, tariffs, and sanctions. Think about the economic leverage that China could possess over countries that oppose its policies, such as the United States has wielded against Russia. This is a pivotal aspect of the dilemma that Americans face in a world where China reigns supreme economically. In such a world, American self-sufficiency in the economy would be unworkable, as the U.S. would represent just a fraction of China's economic might, posing a risk of economic decline. China would likely attempt to weaken the U.S., and American reliance on allies would diminish, with Asian allies influenced by Beijing and Europe making deals with China. While physical security might remain due to geography and nuclear capabilities, economic prosperity would suffer, affecting freedom. Many Americans would effectively work for Chinese companies, follow Chinese rules, and consume Beijing-curated information, aligning with China's preferences in various aspects of life. To make this more tangible, consider the issues many Americans have with social media companies and their regulation. Currently, there's an assumption that Americans have the power to address these problems, but if China holds sway over the world economy, that assumption would no longer hold. Social media companies would ultimately answer to Beijing, likely leading to an even more problematic situation for American users. In reality, we don't need to speculate about these potential outcomes. China is already demonstrating what such a world might look like. Look at how China uses economic sanctions not only against neighboring countries, but even against nations far away, such as Canada and Lithuania. Also consider the nature of China's rule, particularly in places like Hong Kong. China's nationalism and its treatment of its citizens do not bode well for expectations of better treatment on the global stage. Now, you might have noticed that we haven't even mentioned Taiwan or China's military yet. That's not by accident. The primary focus here is on economic and political stakes, namely, who wields power in the future world economy. It's important to grasp that economic and political power are intricately intertwined, and political power, particularly geopolitical power, plays a substantial role in shaping economic dynamics. Free and fair markets don't just emerge on their own. They are influenced, sustained, and molded by political factors, in other words, by power. It's vital to understand that China's path to dominance in Asia relies heavily on military means, as economic sanctions and persuasion alone are unlikely to secure willing acceptance of Chinese hegemony. China faces challenges with its Belt and Road Initiative, and even nations highly dependent on Chinese imports, like Australia, have resisted China's economic pressure. China is actively building up its military, including conventional and nuclear forces, with a focus on addressing the Taiwan issues and expanding its power regionally and globally. In response, the United States must aim to prevent China's dominance in Asia without resorting to war, adhering to the principle of preparing for peace through strength. This necessitates forming a coalition, as the U.S. cannot realistically counter China's ambitions alone. Potential coalition members include India, Japan, Australia, and Taiwan. However, the effectiveness of this coalition hinges on one crucial factor: conviction. Countries in Asia must believe it's in their best interest to resist Chinese influence. Most of them do not wish to fall under Beijing's thumb. But if the alternative is economic disaster and exclusion from benefits China has to offer, they are more likely to make deals with China. Therefore, the key to ensuring this coalition's success is the conviction that it is prudent. In other words, the coalition, led by a strong and resolute United States, must be powerful and steadfast enough to withstand Chinese pressure or even aggression. This brings us to the significance of Taiwan in the grand scheme of things. While we might admire Taiwan for its democracy and entrepreneurial spirit, these attributes alone are not sufficient to justify the United States going to war. Taiwan is crucial to the United States for two specific reasons. It is strategically critical for the defense of Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, and it serves as a litmus test for how the United States is perceived as a reliable cornerstone of the coalition. Here's the thing: the United States cannot rationally rely on a strategy of total war or devastating economic warfare to protect what, for the United States, is a significant but non-existential interest. Instead, the United States needs a strategy aligned with the importance of the interest at stake. This is precisely what a denial defense strategy does. It focuses on thwarting a Chinese invasion of an ally and ensuring that Beijing cannot seize and hold their critical territory. If this can be achieved, by definition, it can be done for other allies in Asia, such as Japan, the Philippines, and Australia. The ultimate goal of this strategy is to deny China's hegemonic aspirations in Asia. This is not an exceptionally high strategic standard. It's merely about denying the invasion, not pursuing the conquest, dismembering China, or changing its regime. However, it is incredibly demanding in practice because of China's formidable strength, its proximity to Taiwan and other allies, and its determined focus. Meanwhile, the United States often finds itself distracted. The good news is that this strategy is feasible, provided that the United States and its allies focus on action rather than rhetoric. Taiwan is, after all, an island situated merely 100 miles off the coast of China. The United States possesses strengths in aerospace, maritime capabilities, and high technology, precisely the assets needed to repel a cross-strait invasion. These areas of strength are also mirrored in Japan, Taiwan, and Australia. Here's where it gets bewildering and indeed infuriating. The United States is not adequately pursuing what's necessary to construct an effective denial defense. The most effective way to avoid war on unfavorable terms is to show China that the United States has the capability to thwart their invasion in a way that is feasible for the United States to implement. Unfortunately, this is not the path the U.S. government is currently treading. Defending Taiwan isn't world policing. It safeguards American security, liberty, and prosperity from China's tangible threat. It's about practical protection of U.S. interests, making support crucial. This exploration aims for your comprehensive understanding. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.